From 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio,
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m, Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still...
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel. Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. So the Prime Minister says he's going to keep us safe from Chinese spy balloons, and London Mayor Sadiq Khan is keeping us safe from car fumes, even if it means closing down whole high streets. I know it's Valentine's Day, but I don't need a knight in shining armour, thanks. I want these blokes to take as little of my money as possible and spend it better, don't you? We're also going to have the latest on the humanitarian disaster unfolding in the Turkey-Syria earthquake zone, with the latest on the death toll there in just a moment. The Tories are now fighting back, of course, against Labour's accusation yesterday of splashing the expenses cash. Oh, and the messy business of tipping in restaurants with William Sitwell. All of that after your news.
Good morning. It's 3 minutes past 10. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. The US military says it has recovered key sensors from the suspected Chinese spy balloon. The balloon was downed off South Carolina's coast on the 4th of February. The US Northern Command says the search crews found significant debris from the site, including the priority sensor and electronic pieces. The US has also shot down 3 more objects since then. Beijing denies it was a government spy vessel. Millions of households are facing an increase in their council tax from April. Research by the County Councils Network says 3/4 of councils in England are planning a 5% hike. This is the maximum amount allowed without the need for a local referendum, and would add around £100 a year to bills for average Band D properties. The local authorities say they have little choice but to raise the council tax in order to protect services. The UK's unemployment rate has remained unchanged. That's despite the economy flatlining. New figures from the Office for National Statistics say unemployment was 3.7% in the 3 months to December. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has described the figures as a sign of resilience, adding that the best thing to do to make people's wages go further is to halve inflation. But Labour says the government has left the economy lagging behind on the global stage. Economics commentator Laura Laird told GB News what trends we are seeing.
Unemployment rate is still 3.7%. That is incredibly low. So many countries would envy that. The EU is looking at over 6%, and that's a historical low for them. So even if we discuss unemployment rate and that rising, it's still very, very low. Vacancies are beginning to fall. That means that more people are coming into the workforce, or maybe companies aren't advertising as much, but there still seem to be plenty of jobs.
Car giant Ford says it is cutting around 3,800 jobs across Europe over the next 3 years. This includes 1,300 jobs in the UK, with most of the cuts at the research site at Dunton in Essex. Production sites at Halewood, Dagenham and Daventry will not be affected. It is part of a major restructuring programme, with the brand saying it wants to focus on a smaller range of electric vehicles. University staff are to begin the first of 3 days of strike action today in an ongoing dispute over pay, pensions and working conditions. Around 70,000 members of the University of College Union will walk out, threatening disruption in 150 universities. Civil servants are also striking this week, including PCS union members at the British Museum, Department for Work and Pensions, DVLA and the Animal and Plant Health Agency. Syria's president has told UN officials he will open 2 more border crossings so emergency aid can enter from neighbouring Turkey. The move comes a week after an earthquake struck Turkey and Syria, killing more than 37,000 people. Many Syrians have expressed anger over the lack of aid reaching opposition-controlled areas. The UN says aid deliveries will be allowed through the 2 crossings for an initial 3 months. NATO defence ministers are meeting this afternoon in Brussels to discuss support for Ukraine. The Secretary-General of the alliance says the possible supply of fighter jets to Kyiv will be discussed at the 2-day gathering. It comes after his warning that we are already seeing a fresh Russian offensive in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says NATO is trying to make its involvement in Ukraine's conflict even clearer. The leaders will also discuss the threat posed by spy balloons. At least 3 people have been killed after a gunman opened fire at Michigan State University late last night. Another 5 people have been taken to hospital, some with life-threatening injuries. Police say the suspect died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The motive behind the attack is not yet known. Archie Battersby's mother has opened up about how she only found her son was being bullied in school after his death. 12-year-old Archie's life support was withdrawn in August after his parents failed to overturn a High Court ruling that doctors could lawfully do so. Coroners concluded he died accidentally in a prank or experiment that went wrong. In a GB News exclusive, Holly Dance says she now plans to get involved in anti-bullying charities.
It was a massive shock to me because Archie always told me everything, and I still feel if it was getting to him to the level that he was worried or concerned, I do think that even if he didn't tell me, he would have told his brother. But had that support been in place at senior school, again, that trusted person, Archie might have been able to tell that person that he was being bullied.
You're watching GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now, it's back to Bev.
very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Here's what's coming up today. It's been just over a week since the fatal Turkey-Syria earthquake that killed over 36,000 people. Heroic rescuers continue to pull survivors from the rubble, but aid workers are warning that people will now die from infections. The Syrian government has agreed to open 2 more border crossings to allow aid into the country. I'm going to be joined shortly by a humanitarian emergencies expert to explain the current dangers to life and also how you might help. And it's Valentine's Day. Doesn't matter if it's a first date or a meal with a partner you're frankly a bit bored of. The tipping bit is always super awkward, isn't it? Especially now when we seem to be in a customer service crisis. There's always suggestions of putting tips on our grocery shopping. I'm going to get the thoughts of one restaurant critic who is sick and tired of being encouraged to tip for a substandard service. Let me know your thoughts on that at GBViews at gbnews.uk. I'm also going to have my expert panel in the studio this morning. Political editor at The Express, Sam Lister, will join me alongside broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn. We'll get their thoughts on the millions of households facing a 5% tax increases from April. That's Sam's story on the front page of The Express today. And also why record numbers of women are not applying to university. Why might that be? You are my third panellist. I'd love to hear from you. Email me, gbviews at gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews to have your say. So in just a moment, we're going to be bringing you the latest on the earthquake situation in Syria and Turkey. But first of all, it is Valentine's Day, as I just said. And tipping, of course, is always the awkward bit of the meal, isn't it? It's now edged its way through the hospitality sector and beyond, apparently, from the hotel doorman to restaurant bills and grocery shopping. Since the pandemic, I think it's fair to say that staff shortages and working from home culture has resulted in a quality of service decline. Do you agree? Joining me now is restaurant critic at The Telegraph, William Sitwell. Good morning, William. Great to see you. So this is a piece that you've written in the paper about the fact that you're frankly getting a little bit tired of the confusion around tipping. We've always had it. In America, it's much more simple. So where are we at now? What's changed?
Well, the peg for this piece in The Telegraph, which was online yesterday, was the fact that in a well-known magazine in New York called New York Magazine, there was an etiquette guide that told you how to behave on dates, how to behave on Zoom, but it also plugged into the etiquette of tipping. And it suggested that now, across the United States, people should start tipping in grocery stores. And as you know, a lot of things come over from the States, a lot of things come over from the pond. Some of them are glorious, some of them not so great. You know, jeans, prenups, they're pretty good. But I think the culture of tipping is one that I think, you know, it sits awkwardly with the British public. I mean, have you ever tried to avoid tipping a black cab? Have you tried to get out of a taxi without tipping? You know, the guy would probably chase you down the street. So I think there's a cultural problem here because we don't have that sort of affinity. I mean, I've been out in bars and pubs with American friends in London who have ordered a drink from the bartender and tipped them, which some people might think is fantastically charming. I just think it's a bit strange, a bit oleaginous, pervy almost. So when you're going out tonight to take your other half out for dinner, and if it's the only night you're doing it, that's tragic, by the way. But we can get on and talk about that in a minute. You need to really focus on how good the service is. Service is an art. And I think over the last few years, you know, we've seen vast improvements in British hospitality, but service still lags, I think. And it's not seen as something that's taught in schools, in colleges, as much as chefing is.
Never more so, William, than at the moment. It feels like we came out of the pandemic and everybody had either not had any experience in shops and restaurants, so they were young and they were these first jobs and nobody had taught them how to do decent customer service. Or maybe people just got a bit lazy and then couldn't be bothered anymore to ask if you wanted your water filled up or whether you wanted another drink. I haven't yet to go into anywhere at the moment that feels like it's got decent customer service. Under those circumstances, do you think it's okay to say to the waiter, can you take the extra service charge off my bill, please? Or is that just that? I mean, it's so awkward.
There are places, of course, where the waiter stands in front of you with that white machine and then guides you as to whether you want to give 5, 10, 15, 20, 30%, and they watch you as you do it. It's incredibly awkward. It really puts you in a difficult position. And what a terrible way to end a date if you have to start haggling over the service, let alone suggesting whether the bill should be split. But I do think that restaurants will only ever improve if you can, man up in the establishment and complain when you have an issue. There's no point really complaining afterwards, unless, of course, you're privileged enough to be a restaurant critic, where it's my job to complain afterwards. So I'm exempt from that rule. But I do think that the British antipathy towards complaining is a weakness. So we should always moan at the time. But I think you're right. I mean, I've arrived in places, and a bit like, the great restaurant critic Michael Winner. If he arrived in a restaurant, the first thing they said to him was, "Have you got a reservation?" He said, "That is not a greeting. You need to look someone in the eye, greet them, and then segue into the fact that they might have a reservation and whether or not you're going to allow them in." But, in this digital age, eye contact, when humans see humans for the first time, when strangers meet other strangers in restaurants, service staff need to look people in the eye. And, bad service can destroy a restaurant, even if the food is good. If the food is terrible, great service can actually rescue it, because you can empathize with the person who's been serving you. They can probably sympathize with the fact that thing's been a disaster. And if you have someone who's incredibly engaging, it really can turn the experience around. And I would say, I think that, service has improved vastly over the last few years, but it's still not something that's taught enough in colleges, because
William,
hospitality
what,
is a word, isn't it?
What do you think of the idea? Because you see, I always get a little bit concerned when they add on the digital tip on the end of a bill, your service charge, 15, 20%, whatever it is. I don't want it to go to the management necessarily. I certainly, if it's a chain, don't want it to go to the bloke who's running the chain. I want it to go to the waiter who served me. Is it okay to say, take that off and then give him a few quid in cash?
It's completely okay to do that. The system we have in this country is called the trunk. It's an electronic system where the tips are split, and the sharing of the tips is more or less up to the management. So you could have someone who's been terrible all night and they will get an equal share of the tip. You are not, by law, legally, you don't have to pay the tip. So there's nothing wrong with you to cross the palm of the person who's been serving you. It just might put them in a bit of an awkward position after service, when someone might argue that someone else has been really working for the tips.
Yeah.
But then what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
I mean, the tradition of tipping doormen in hotels, people, you get people coming out of the cab, they tip the doorman because they want, they're bribing them, aren't they, really, for future good service? They're investing in that.
William, I can't let you go without asking you one quick question about the hospitality industry. We had some figures yesterday saying how many pubs and bars are likely to go bankrupt. There was an extra 200 or so last year compared to the year before. What are you seeing in your job as a professional restaurant critic? Is it tough out there?
It is very tough, but I would say the people who are doing well are doing well. A lot of restaurants have changed the hours they operate, are not opening every day of the week. It's good for the teams because they're giving them a bit more downtime. It's harder often to book places in restaurants. I mean, I book restaurants week in, week out. Apart from the nightmare of the online reservation system where you can't actually get tables when you want, it has become quite difficult to get tables in restaurants. So a bit like measuring the economy as to whether you can get a cab in the streets of London, I think there is hope because quite a lot of places are doing well. I think that COVID protected a lot of poor businesses that should have gone bust. I know that sounds harsh, but there is a natural failure that happens every year. We're still seeing the hangover from the VAT relief and the bounce back loans, et cetera, coming into play. So we are still seeing places close down. I would salute people for going out tonight, but don't just take your other half out on Valentine's Day. Support the hospitality industry across the rest of the year if you can. It's a vital part of our culture.
OK, fantastic. Good to see you, William. William Sitwell there, one of the country's top restaurant reviewers, don't you know, and journalists. Now, still to come, we've got a story about council tax rises. This is Sam Lister's story on the front page of The Express today. Sam is going to be here as one of my panellists, and also broadcaster Andrew Eborn. See you in 2.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Spring-like conditions for some of us today once the fog clears. Sunny across the UK and very mild. It's not going to be completely sunny everywhere. Parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland sees a warm front and some showers associated with this. But the air in general is being drawn up from the south. It's dry, it's sunny air and it's very mild. Once the fog clears, the fog sticking around as an area of low cloud into parts of eastern England at first through the afternoon. And you can see the cloudier skies there for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A few showers travelling across Scotland. But otherwise, where we've got the sunny skies elsewhere, temperatures up at 10 to 13 Celsius widely. But for somewhere like North Devon, North Wales, 14 to 16 Celsius is possible, given the winds will be warming out a little as they travel over higher ground to the south. Once evening gets underway, some fog patches will develop once again across the southeast and eastern England. More patchy, I think, compared with last night, but still risk to travel first thing across eastern parts of England. Further west, we've got cloud and rain appearing by dawn. That's pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland as morning gets underway. Strong winds, gales for the Outer Hebrides for a time. The rain, though, peters out as it pushes across England and Wales. During the afternoon, it's an area of cloud and some light outbreaks of rain. And ahead of that, once the fog clears, sunny skies once again at 13 to 16 Celsius once more across the southeast and eastern England. To the rear of the cold front, we've got some showers into Scotland as well as Northern Ireland, and then some more persistent cloud and rain pushing into Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and western England through Wednesday evening. The winds will pick up as well, and by Thursday it's just a damp, breezy, but also mild day. Very windy weather on Friday, clearing by Saturday.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
There's a guy who went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions. I have no time for cultural totalitarianism. We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Very good morning. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. My guests are here with me. Political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister. Good to see you, Sam. And broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn. Sam, your story on the front page of the Express today. Families facing the biggest council tax rise as Britain's fear being priced out of life. What's this about?
Yeah, we've had research from the County Councils Network. They've gone through the budget documents of councils across the country. It's the biggest councils, the ones that are responsible for social care, and those councils have the power to put up your bills by 4.99%. without having to kind of go to the local people. And 3/4 have decided to do that. The information is not completely all there. Some councils haven't declared yet, but of the ones that have declared, 3 in 4 are going to put up bills by essentially 5%. A huge blow to people at a time of a cost of living crisis. It's about £100 on average, but that really varies on where you are in the country, what kind of council you've got. And in rural councils, they have much higher council tax bills. It's more like £150 extra a year.
So you've got a list in the paper here of the highest council tax bills in the current financial year, and the lowest council tax bills. So where can people go, Sam? Well, yeah, you're going to say Express.
Pick up a copy of the Express
to find out if that's one of their councils.
Yeah,
you're kind of ahead of the game on this, aren't you?
Yeah. So as I say, we've used this county council network research. They've done, I have to say, they've done the hard work. They've gone through these documents, but actually, you'll find that the lowest council tax bills, 9 of them are in London. And that's because London councils get an awful lot more in terms of subsidies from the government.
Right.
So you've got a lower tax bill in London, you've got much higher costs elsewhere, but actually your council tax bills are lower. Now, I've had an awful lot of reaction on social media, huge amounts to this story, and people are just saying, look, my bins aren't being collected as often as they used to be. There's potholes all over the roads that haven't been filled. Our services are being reduced and our bills are going up, and people are pretty furious, I have to say.
I'm not surprised. Are you, Andrew?
Well, I think that is the issue, isn't it? You've got to work out, if you need extra money, where's it going to come from? And a great article, if only I could meet the journalist who wrote it.
I know, aren't we?
It's fantastic. But they've got it, and you've done your little list of shame. Where you can find out is go to your local council website, and they will tell you, you're in Lambeth, aren't you, I think?
Yes, I am, yeah.
And yours is only 1.99%, I can tell you, if you didn't know. Mine, however, is 4.99%, because I'm in Westminster, so that's shot up accordingly. Although there is this sort of name and shame list where actually sort of the people at the top, Rutland is going up by 2,300 and threepence, a bizarre figure, but that's what it's going. But Nottingham, Dorset Council.
Just in case
that's the current year's
bill. In case
bill.
you're in Rutland and you just panic and council tax is going up by £2,000, we just want to clarify.
Panic on the streets of Rutland. I never want to do that. It's got to be good. But they do say, but the reason in the county areas, historically they've received lower government money, and that's why they need to try and find the money somewhere. What you need to do is basically have a spreadsheet. You need to turn around and say, this is how much all the services cost, and this is where the money is coming from to pay for it.
And people need to start hassling their local MPs.
Yeah.
That's what I'm realising. Contact them. They've been, people haven't been enraged by this sort of local stories for almost for decades, as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just my age, right? But it just feels like right now we're getting a terrible service, and we're paying more and more for it. Have they explained, Sam, at all why they feel they need it?
Yeah, they say that it's the kind of worst time to be setting a local council budget in a decade, that actually the inflationary impact on their own bills has had a huge effect on things like leisure centres. Obviously, heating swimming pools has become really expensive. School transport has become really expensive because of increasing fuel prices, and also the cost of filling potholes, the cost of materials and contractors has gone up. So they're saying that actually we're feeling the squeeze too. But I would just point out there's 3 council areas where if you're a resident in Croydon, Slough or Thurrock, you're going to face a rise of 10% in Slough and Thurrock and 15% in Croydon.
Wow.
And that's because those councils have been so badly run, they've basically gone bust, and taxpayers are now going to have to kind of foot the bill for that ineptitude.
If you're listening and watching at home, let me know what you think about this, won't you? gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address, because I'd love to know whether you feel like you're getting value for money from your taxpayers' money in these local areas. Do we know whether there's a distinction between whether they are predominantly Labour areas or Conservative councils?
I think it's widely spread because it's 3/4 of councils, so in a way it really doesn't kind of matter. It's more to do with, are you London or non-London?
Right.
Are you rural?
I was just wondering
or
whether
city?
it was some of the Labour councils playing politics a bit with an election on the horizon and saying, well, look, if you've got a Conservative government, you're going to have to pay more. They've not given,
It's important to question everything. You should absolutely look at that.
Absolutely.
And in the follow-up article, we can summarise both. We'll put both.
Talking about questioning everything.
Yes.
Some people are quite disappointed that they're not UFOs. Let me tell you. Some people were quite looking forward to the fact that we might have a distraction with being invaded by UFOs, but we're not actually, are we, Andrew Iborn? These are Iborn, isn't it?
Iborn. An unfortunate vowel movement at this time of the morning. Andrew Iborn, that's got to go. Well, some people say we are being invaded. The star who never failed to let us down, they say it is that. I find it extraordinary, the story, because it sounds so low-tech for spying. What, you put up a balloon and you've got somebody looking down on you? It doesn't make sense to me. And if you shoot it down, don't you then scramble and say, well, here's the kit and this is what
the
proves you?
Americans have now done, isn't
And have they said they found something?
They're taking some sort of hexagonal metallic structure out of the water. I just can't help but feel we might be being played here, Sam. Like, surely China has always spied on America and UK. Yeah. We are probably doing something similar, aren't we?
I wouldn't know, and I wouldn't want to declare if I did.
Surely these things must be always going on.
I'm sure they are, and absolutely. But I think Lord Haig, he's obviously a former Foreign Secretary, he was saying this morning that actually this is embarrassing for both China and for the US. It's embarrassing for China that their low-tech balloon has been spotted. It's embarrassing for the US that they've allowed this to infiltrate their airspace. But what struck me was the actual embarrassing thing, I think, for the US is the fact that they did put it out there that they can't rule out extraterrestrial infiltration of their airspace, which then led to the White House has then had to make a statement saying, we don't think this is alien behaviour. And number 10, our official spokesman for the Prime Minister yesterday was asked by my colleagues, is the Prime Minister concerned about the possibility of extraterrestrial, involvement in these balloons? And he had to say no. Look, he's more concerned about terrestrial matters like cancer, than alien life force sending balloons over the world.
I thought Rishi Sunak's response was quite interesting to this, Andrew, because he was like, I will keep you safe. Yes. We will keep you safe. Yes. There's this rhetoric from the government about keeping us safe. Margaret Thatcher wasn't bothered whether we were safe.
Well, I think she was, but she never sort of touted in that sort of way.
But this patrician role, stop nannying me. It's my job to keep myself safe.
And it's what we always say, it's about communication, isn't it? Yeah. Is that the message he's being told to peddle people? Because fear, as you know, the father of PR, Edward Bernays, he always said the best way of selling anything is through fear. Now, people are scared of whether it's little green men coming, or women, or either coming down and invading us, or they're scared of things being on high alert. And a lot of the people talk about these typhoon planes being ready. They're always ready. It's not because of the balloons. It's not new. So the headlines that scream that we're going to be all these sort of problems, they've got issues. But I can tell you that the actual biggest threat is not from weather balloons. It's actually from tech. And the other story in the news at the moment is talking about these drones that the police are using, which come from Chinese firms. And that's a much easier, cleverer way of infiltrating if that were to be the case. Yeah. So they should look at that as well.
Fantastic. Right. Thanks, guys. We've got to move on. Remember when we were all fed up of lockdowns and all too clearly, and fantasised about leaving this country to live in a tropical paradise? Well, one man did exactly that. Find out where he went and what he's been doing after your morning.
Thank you, Bev. Good morning. It's 10:32. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. The US military says it has recovered key sensors from the suspected Chinese spy balloon. The balloon was downed off South Carolina's coast on the 4th of February. The US Northern Command says the search crews found significant debris from the site, including the priority sensor and electronic pieces. The US has also shot down 3 more objects since then. Beijing denies it was a government spy vessel. Millions of households are facing an increase in their council tax from April. Research by the county's councils network says 3/4 of councils in England are planning a 5% hike. This is the maximum amount allowed without the need for a local referendum and would add around £100 a year to bills for the average Band D property. The local authorities say they have little choice but to raise the council tax in order to protect services. The UK's unemployment rate has remained unchanged. That's despite the economy flatlining. New figures from the Office for National Statistics say unemployment was 3.7% in the 3 months to December. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has described the figures as a sign of resilience, adding that the best thing to do to make people's wages go further is to halve inflation. But Labour says the government has left the economy lagging behind on the global stage. Syria's president has told UN officials he will open 2 more border crossings so emergency aid can enter from neighbour Turkey. The move comes a week after an earthquake struck Turkey and Syria, killing more than 36,000 people. President Bashar al-Assad has agreed to allow United Nations aid deliveries for 3 months. Car giant Ford has said it is cutting around 3,800 jobs across Europe over the next 3 years. This includes 1,300 jobs in the UK, with most of the cuts at the research site at Dunton in Essex. Production sites at Halewood, Dagenham and Daventry will not be affected. It's part of a major restructuring programme, with the brand saying it wants to focus on a smaller range of electric vehicles. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News.
Very good morning. It's 10:35. This is Bev Turner today on GB News. Thanks for watching. Now, I hope you find this next item inspiring rather than depressing. Either way, if you're anything like me, the chances are you'll be pretty jealous of my next guest. He was an estate agent who was isolated in his London flat when the lockdowns were enforced. But instead of sitting at home and drinking too much like the rest of us did, he searched the globe for a place which would allow him to live freely without COVID restrictions, and he settled upon Zanzibar, an island off Africa's east coast. And he joins me now, Richard Ashby. Good morning, director at Shevo Limited. Now, let's go back to the beginning, and I can't, honestly, I'm inspired, but like I said, I'm also slightly jealous. We're very jealous, actually. So what happened? Lockdowns were enacted, and you decided to do what?
Well, yeah, you could see it coming a mile off that there was something really sinister going, sort of coming down the pipe. So I just said, I fled to the country really to chill with my parents, but that was just even worse. You know, I was living in central London, everything just closed. And then in the countryside, you know, on every news channel, it was the same rhetoric. And I just thought, okay, forget this. So, yeah, I went to the south of France. But of course, which is glorious if you've been to Antibes. But after 10 weeks, the restrictions came back. So, yeah, that was it. It was like I was just not going to accept this sort of journey that the government were pushing everyone down. And it seemed to be coming from all angles. So,
OK, well,
yeah,
it looks like you're sort of sat on someone's patio right now, Richard, but we're going to play some pictures of where you live and how beautiful life is for you. Why Zanzibar? What was it about that country, that archipelago, I think it is pronounced? What is it about Zanzibar and those islands which was so appealing to those people who didn't want to be locked down?
Yeah, well, the government never did anything. And I'd never been to Africa before. There were no restrictions. There were no lockdown. There was nothing. I mean, I think he kicked out the WHO very early on, said this is a load of rubbish. And so my mate was living here up in Nungwi on Zanzibar and said, come along. I'd had a good life in Antibes, so I was like, you know, let's wait until it gets bad here. And, of course, Mars came back in. And then you turn up here and it is just unbelievable. It's like turquoise water. You know, your classic vision of paradise, reefs, palm trees, everything. It is astoundingly beautiful. And it was complete freedom.
And you had no connection. You had no connection, Richard, to Zanzibar before this time. It was just, it came across your radar as a place that was living freely and had no COVID restrictions. Is that right?
I'd never been to Africa in my life.
And now you're living there, you've settled there, you're building houses and you're selling them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, I was not going to stay living in London selling multi-million-pound real estate wearing a suit and a mask. It was just, that was, you know, supposed to be a lifestyle job. I wasn't selling a lifestyle anymore. I just said, forget this. I'm off, basically. And when they put this restrictions back on in France, I was like, OK, that was the push I needed. I left and I've never been back.
Well, I want to bring up one of the pictures of the houses that you're selling, because actually, and these kind of houses are not just yours, but there are lots of them available in those sorts of areas. So this we're looking at here is apparently on the market for about the equivalent of £144,000, which is sort of mind-blowing from where we're sitting. If you're listening on the radio, it's a beautiful glass-fronted, high apex, 2-bedroom, 3-bathroom, swimming pool on the beach. I mean, just looks incredible. Are there barriers to British people moving to Zanzibar and buying over there? Is it quite tricky to do?
No, you can literally buy land as a tourist. You don't even have to physically come here. You can buy a villa as a tourist. You just wire the money, send it over, and you're an owner. The only thing you can't do is run a business on land without residency, but that's sort of common sense, really. As soon as you start generating business from this real estate, but I mean, you can give it to us to manage it, for example, and you'll still never have to become a resident. You just receive the income overseas. We pay the withholding tax on behalf of the owners, and then it's job done. There are no restrictions whatsoever in that regard.
It all sounds too good to be true. Richard, it sounds too good to be true. Why haven't more people done this?
I don't know. They don't know about it. I didn't know anything about the place. I thought Tanzania was in Australia before I came here, so I had no idea. I sort of confused it with Tasmania or something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's great to talk to you. I'm deeply envious that you get to wake up in the morning and have a swim in the sea and have a completely different lifestyle. Will you stay there now? Will you come back to London?
Yeah. No, I'll never come back. It's it's the simple things that are the problem here. Like, I'm doing this interview for my local car dealership because the Wi-Fi is broken at the office this morning. That's why it looks like I'm sitting on someone's foot. But if you want to build a $30 million beachfront residential resort, the government are like well up for it. It takes 2 minutes, And so it's the other way around. The simple things, are trickier, but the bigger things are amazing. And I would never leave.
OK. All right. Thank you, Richard. Richard Ashby there, living the life in Zanzibar. You've been getting in touch with your views. We're talking about the council tax rises with Sam. Why do council taxes only ever go up, not down, irrespective of the economic climate? Very good point, Anthony. And Dee says, we already have far lower personal tax rates than most of the EU at 36% compared to 51% in France. We've got the highest tax burden in this country for 70 years at the moment. Lots of those messages coming in, so keep them coming, won't you? GBViews at gbnews.uk. Now, farmers are being encouraged to talk about their mental health in an effort to improve their safety at work. This is a brilliant film we've got for you now. It's all about farmers, and it's been launched as the annual Mind Your Head campaign. Will Hollis has the story. Don't turn off.
The fields of Cambridgeshire are the flattest in the country, but farming here still comes with a mountain of responsibility. Matt's been a farmer for 10 years.
Days of the week mean very little to me. It doesn't really matter whether it's a Sunday, a Wednesday, I'll be out there working, doing whatever.
Aged 28, he's part of Britain's army of young farmers. He keeps a few pigs, but mainly sheep here in Whittlesey, where he and his wife Floss and their dogs have settled.
Out of the dogs, we've got 6 collies, 4 of which work or will work, one of which is a puppy at the minute.
No, hold on, we've got 7 collies now.
On the surface, life is idyllic. Yet Matt says beneath, the constant pressures of living and working this way are straining his mental health.
You have to get up out of bed. You have to go out there and do it. It's a have to rather than a want to sometimes.
Soaring inflation and other industry problems are piling onto an already demanding lifestyle. Britain relies on its farmers to feed the country, but the Farm Safety Foundation says poor mental health is putting the people in our most important industry at risk.
Well, farmers are very good at looking after their livestock, their land and their machinery. They're just not very good at looking after themselves.
Steph is from the charity. This week it's running the mental health campaign Mind Your Head.
you're probably more distracted, lack of concentration. Now you pair that up with a large machine that you're working with or an animal that you're working with, and the one thing that could cause that level of distraction could end up with a life-changing and potentially life-ending injury.
In 2021, 22 farmers were killed while working. In the same year, 36 farmers took their own lives in England and Wales. In a statement, Farming Minister Mark Spencer said, "Mental health awareness is an important issue for farming and rural communities, which is why I'm proud to support the Mind Your Head campaign." Matt says he wouldn't change career. Farming offers a freedom few other jobs can. He's discovering ways to beat back anxiety and depression.
Even if it feels bad now, I'm going to be able to get through that, and you just have to believe in your own mind that you can get through it.
As hard as working outdoors can be, the toughest challenge is often inside of your mind. Will Hollis, GB News in Whittlesea.
Thank you, Will. You've been getting in touch. Thank you. We were talking about the China spy balloons, and John has said China has around 300 satellites, of which 100 are military grade, and could read a tombstone in a graveyard. Why on earth would they need a balloon to spy on the UK? That's what you were saying, Andrew.
That's what I said.
And also, the council tax bill. It's the front page of Sam's paper this morning. Craig says, "I'm disgusted that council tax bills are going up considerably yet again. I live in Bridgnorth in South Shropshire. We have poor road conditions, street lights going off at 10 o'clock, bins emptied once a fortnight, schools in disrepair, cuts in transport services and bus routes. I am shocked. You are not alone, Craig." Right, Andrew Eborn, Sam Lister are still with me. So, yesterday, we had this report from Labour about the fact that the Conservatives have spent all this money on these, they're not allowed to call them credit cards, these government procurement cards.
Sounds so catchy, doesn't it?
Doesn't it? Well, I think it's meant to deliberately confuse you.
Never leave home without one, is what I would say.
Without my procurement card. Well, of course, what then subsequently happened since yesterday is that the Conservative press have hit back. It was always going to happen. And now they are very cross about the fact that Angela Rayner spent money on an iPad and AirPods, and they consider those a luxury item. This story just doesn't fly from any direction, does it?
Well, what I love, I always say history repeats itself because people don't learn the lessons from history and take the speck out of your eye before trying to remove all of those sort of things. So, absolutely. So that's basically the story. She's trying to justify the fact that she can't just have any old headphones. You have to be able to have the best, highest 249 quid's worth of earphone to make it work. And she's justifying that because it needs to sync with the other luxury items that she has around. It is about that sort of hypocrisy. You do need to, if you're going to call something out, make sure your own house is in order. And it won't be.
Do you think this was a bit of a non-story when you saw it yesterday, Sam?
Yeah, I thought it was quite clever how they'd done it.
It was clever.
They've got an awful lot of attention from the media, from the newspapers, from broadcasters. That's exactly what they wanted. We're all talking about it. It's it was on the front page of The Guardian. It's been inside the papers again today. So it's job done for Labour, really.
Well, it plays into that idea, doesn't it? The Conservatives are not like us. They're just very profligate and they're spending all our money and they don't care.
Yeah.
In that case, it was a win.
But actually, when you actually drill down into the details, governments spend money, a lot of these foreign trips. Now, when you go on these foreign trips, a Prime Minister cannot be expected to stay in a small B&B because they need to have proper security. And so they've got to be put in a place that can be properly secured by the security people. They also need the staff there. Now, I get that people don't like government spending money, but you do have to accept that sometimes they do have to buy expensive hotel rooms or, for reasons that are beyond their control. These big summits that they go to, all leaders are told which hotel to stay in by the host nation because they'll do security assessments. So, if Labour take power at the next election, which they clearly are hoping to do, they will be in exactly the same position. So when we look at their data in 2 or 3 years' time, we will find exactly the same data.
Absolutely. Right, let's move on to another piece in your paper today, Sam. This is written by a friend of GB News, Ben Habib. He is... he's not a politician. Well, he was in the Brexit Party, wasn't he? And Ben has written this piece... in your paper, which is basically saying, and it's brilliant, and if the Brexit issue is kind of complicated, his piece is really good because it makes it incredibly simple to understand where we're going wrong, Andrew. Yes. And his frustration is Brexit has not been done. We haven't Brexited. He uses it as a verb as opposed to the noun, doesn't he? We haven't done Brexit. What are the reasons he gives for why?
Well, the basic, and that's the problem, because Boris was elected, fantastic 80-seat majority on the basis, we'll get Brexit done.
Yeah.
And China said, well, what does that mean? And what Ben says, you're right, in that brilliant article in a fantastic newspaper, glad we got a journalist from there. It works on that sort of basis. We've left the EU's Commission, its Council, its Parliament and its Court. The EU single market and the customs union, you've got that sort of side. And the principle about taking back control of our laws, our borders, our cash and our fish is what they're sort of basically saying. But there's still sort of issues, because you sort of turn around and say, look, how are things different in that sort of basis? There are so many laws to be unpicked, because it still feels as though it's taking that long sort of process.
Yeah.
And that's the sort of problem. You've got to work out, well, what does Brexit actually mean, apart from being turned into a verb?
That's right, because he says we've left the EU's Commission, its Council, its Parliament, its course, but that does not constitute Brexit. The frustrations, Sam, from people who were Brexiteers is profound. It's just building every day, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think he makes the point that actually we haven't left as one United Kingdom. There is still this issue to be resolved with Northern Ireland. Yeah. It's still subject to EU rules. And until that's resolved, then, we haven't completed Brexit. That we seem to be edging towards a solution on that, but I don't think it's one that's necessarily going to be acceptable to all Brexiteers, because it sounds like the government is willing to compromise on whether the European courts still have some role to play. Yep. And I think the government would say that, and obviously this is all kind of nothing has been signed off yet, but I think the government would say that actually it would be a very minimal role, and we would have control over whether things went to the European Court in the first place. But I think you're going to find a whole big Brexit row coming up in the next few weeks.
And it's also about sort of soundbite politics, isn't it? Because when you ask the electorate, do you want to be in or out, the consequences of that need to be explained. You need to turn around and say, well, what does that mean? Yeah. We've got zillions of laws, lawyer, as you know, and you work on that sort of basis. You say, well, we've got to unpick this and that and everything else. What it basically means is we then have to negotiate with the rest of the world to put other things back in place. So I think when you're explaining it, and then Ben starts on that sort of process, you need to say, look, this is what it means in practice.
Yeah.
And Conservative MPs, they are frustrated because they want to be able to show on the doorstep, this is the reason why we did it. Look, these are some tangible results from why we went through all this. And one of the big ones is control of the UK's borders. And obviously, because of the small boats crisis and how many more people are coming over through that route, and also actual legal migration rising, they're saying that actually they cannot present, on the doorstep that we have taken back control of our borders in the way that they would want to.
And do you think there's any faith that if Keir Starmer gets in, that Brexit will be safe in his hands?
Well, that is a suspicion, and actually Conservative MPs say that if you want to make sure that he cannot reverse it, you have to get rid of all the inherited laws we've got, and they're trying to do that by the end of the year. It's going to be very difficult to do that. But they fear that if that doesn't happen and Keir Starmer does come in, then you will start to see this slight unravelling of Brexit.
Yeah. And that's the problem. Going back to the soundbite, though, you'd say, if Boris turned around and said, get Brexit done, the question is, have you?
Yeah.
Right. Women going to university, or Sadiq Khan's... Sadiq Khan...
Well, interesting, isn't it? Slammed over nonsense data is what they're saying on this sort of basis. This is about the ULEZ thing, where basically a scheme charging motorists £12.50 a day to drive in London. People are opposing that today because Bromley's council leader, a certain Colin Smith, he said that the Commission report by City Hall chose to ignore Bromley's much older population. So what Sadiq was saying is that in Bromley it's got the most toxic air of all. There's a higher death rate, higher excess death rate as a result of it, and the usual sort of thing about causation or correlation. Are the statistics right?
No, because he's cooked the books. He's basically chosen a constituency with much higher age and an older population. What's your paper's stand on these low-traffic neighbourhoods, Sam? Because a lot of people do not like them.
No, they don't. And I think it just moves the problem. it just moves the problem. It doesn't solve the problem, does it? So you create these little kind of middle-class protected zones.
That's right.
And with this, I mean, I would say, they kind of go hand in hand, don't they, these low-traffic neighbourhoods and the ULEZ scheme. And I would just say on the ULEZ scheme, it's a London thing, but this will spread. I mean,
it's already
spreading, and it will just continue. It's spreading to our cities at the moment. It will spread to towns, and it is a tax on working people, because if you drive a van, for example, to do your trade, this is going to hit you. I mean, I already know people who've been hit by it trying to drive into London.
And I live in a ULEZ zone. I had some friends come and stay at the weekend from Wales. £25. By the time they've driven their car to park on my drive, £12.50, drive it off a few days later. £25 to add to the weekend when they've already paying huge amount of petrol costs. Coming into London, spending a huge amount of money on food and drink. He seems tone deaf to me.
Well, it also, you've got to think about the knock-on effect, because you're right. If it puts people off coming into London, does that then have a knock-on effect for the shops? And that's my point. So a lot of it, you talked about the shopkeepers, the restaurants and so on and so forth, who are really suffering, having had no trade during lockdown or minimal trade. What's going to happen to that? So firstly, get the statistics right. If they're wrong and you're not telling the truth about them, let's address that. Secondly, look at the consequences.
And it's about the trust, isn't it? Because his statistics aren't right. Like, we don't trust you, Sadiq Khan, on this issue in any way, shape or form. We aren't seeing, as residents of London, we aren't walking out of our front door and coughing and choking because the air is so bad. Maybe there are things that we don't know. However, we've got to... It comes back to what I was saying earlier about this idea that the London Mayor is there to keep us safe. Well, do you know what will keep us safe? Tackle knife crime. Give me a security guard on the tube and on the buses. That will make people feel safe. This is just killing our high street, and it's anti-motorist. And I just... You know what I fear, Andrew? I know you're a futurist. You can look into your crystal ball. I feel like the future is just going to be lots of men riding around on bicycles while the women are at home with all the kit and all the paraphernalia that we need to leave the house.
Is that right? You think that's the future?
It's all your fault.
It is my fault. I take the blame. I've got broad shoulders.
We've got to the end of the first hour. Wow, we packed lots in. Now, I will keep you safe, says Rishi Sunak. Are you fed up of being mollycoddled? We'll be back in just a few minutes.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Spring-like conditions for some of us today once the fog clears. Sunny across the UK and very mild. It's not going to be completely sunny everywhere. Parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland sees a warm front and some showers associated with this. But the air in general is being drawn up from the south. It's dry, it's sunny air and it's very mild. Once the fog clears, the fog sticking around as an area of low cloud into parts of eastern England at first through the afternoon. And you can see the cloudier skies there for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A few showers travelling across Scotland. But otherwise, where we've got the sunny skies elsewhere, temperatures up at 10 to 13 Celsius widely. But for somewhere like North Devon, North Wales, 14 to 16 Celsius is possible, given the winds will be warming out a little as they travel over higher ground to the south. Once evening gets underway, some fog patches will develop once again across the southeast and eastern England. More patchy, I think, compared with last night, but still risk to travel first thing across eastern parts of England. Further west, we've got cloud and rain appearing by dawn. That's pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland as morning gets underway. Strong winds, gales for the Outer Hebrides for a time. The rain, though, peters out as it pushes across England and Wales. During the afternoon, it's an area of cloud and some light outbreaks of rain. And ahead of that, once the fog clears, sunny skies once again, and 13 to 16 Celsius once more across the southeast and eastern England. To the rear of the cold front, we've got some showers into Scotland as well as Northern Ireland, and then some more persistent cloud and rain pushing into Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and Western England through Wednesday evening. The winds will pick up as well, and by Thursday it's just a damp, breezy, but also mild day. Very windy weather on Friday, clearing by Saturday.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning, welcome back to GB News with me, Bev Turner. Right, it is Valentine's Day. You might have noticed, or maybe you didn't. Does that matter to you? No, I'm not that bothered personally. And what exactly is going on with these spy balloons? Rishi says he's going to keep you safe, but we're going to talk to a defence expert in just a moment to find out why he might be saying that. That's all coming up after a look at the latest news.
Thank you, Bev. Good morning. It is 11 o'clock. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. The US military says it has recovered key sensors from the suspected Chinese spy balloon. The balloon was brought down off South Carolina's coast on the 4th of February. The US Northern Command says the search crews found significant debris from the site, including the priority sensor and electronic pieces. The US has also shot down 3 more objects since then. Beijing denies it was a government spy vessel. Millions of households are facing an increase in their council tax from April. Research by the County Councils Network says 3/4 of councils in England are planning a 5% hike. This is the maximum amount allowed without the need for a local referendum and would add around £100 a year to bills for average Band D properties. The local authorities say they have little choice but to raise the council tax in order to protect services. The UK's unemployment rate has remained unchanged. That's despite the economy flatlining. New figures from the Office for National Statistics say unemployment was 3.7% in the 3 months to December. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has described the figures as a sign of resilience, adding that the best thing to do to make people's wages go further is to halve inflation. But Labour says the government has left the economy lagging behind on the global stage. Economics commentator Laura Laird told GB News what trends we are seeing.
Unemployment rate is still 3.7%. That is incredibly low. So many countries would envy that. The EU is looking at over 6%, and that's a historical low for them. So even if we discuss unemployment rate and that rising, it's still very, very low. Vacancies are beginning to fall. That means that more people are coming into the workforce, or maybe companies aren't advertising as much, but there still seem to be plenty of jobs.
Car giant Ford has said it is cutting around 3,800 jobs across Europe over the next 3 years. This includes 1,300 jobs in the UK, with most of the cuts at the research site in Dunton in Essex. Production sites at Halewood, Dagenham and Daventry will not be affected. It's part of a major restructuring programme, with the brand saying it wants to focus on a smaller range of electric vehicles. University staff are to begin the first of 3 days of strike action today in an ongoing dispute over pay, pensions and working conditions. Around 70,000 members of the University of College Union are walking out, threatening disruption in 150 universities. Civil servants are also striking this week. That includes PCS union members at the British Museum, Department for Work and Pensions, DVLA and the Animal and Plant Health Agency. Syria's president has told UN officials he will open 2 more border crossings so emergency aid can enter from neighbouring Turkey. The move comes a week after an earthquake struck Turkey and Syria, killing more than 37,000 people. Many Syrians have expressed anger over the lack of aid reaching opposition-controlled areas. The UN says aid deliveries will be allowed through the 2 crossings for an initial 3 months. NATO defence ministers are meeting this afternoon in Brussels to discuss support for Ukraine. The Secretary-General of Alliance says a possible supply of fighter jets to Kyiv will be discussed at the two-day gathering. It comes after his warning that we are already seeing a fresh Russian offensive in Ukraine. Meanwhile, the Kremlin says NATO is trying to make its involvement in Ukraine's conflict even clearer. The leaders will also discuss the threat posed by sky balloons. At least 3 people have been killed after a gunman opened fire at Michigan State University late last night. Another 5 people have been taken to hospital, some with life-threatening injuries. Police said the suspect died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The motive behind the attack is not yet known. Wire Council has removed councillors' contact details from its website following abuse over missing mother of 2, Nicola Bully. The decision comes after a number of councillors received inappropriate emails and phone calls. Lancashire Police is investigating. The 45-year-old was last seen walking her dog over a fortnight ago. This is GB News. We'll bring you more news as it happens. Now it's back to Bev.
Very good morning. Welcome to Bev Turner today on GB News. Still to come this hour. Rishi Sunak has pledged to do whatever it takes to keep the country safe, with Typhoon fighter jets ready to shoot down Chinese spy balloons. Do we really have anything to fear? I'm going to be finding out in just a moment. My panel will be back thanks to our drive towards electric vehicles. Ford are cutting 1,300 jobs in the UK. We'll cover that. And why are so few women applying to go to university? And it's Valentine's Day. Are you scaling back your plans due to the cost of living? Let me know. A survey has found that nearly half of Brits that want to get married say that they can't afford to propose due to rising prices. Ellie Costello will tell us a little bit more about that in a while. And of course, you are my third panellist. Do get in touch. Email me gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet me at gbnews to have your say. So the Prime Minister has got all tough and says that he's going to do whatever it takes to keep us safe amid threats from suspected Chinese spy balloons. Rishi Sunak said that Typhoon fighter jets were on standby in the event of an incursion after the US shot down a 4th suspected device. The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, is under pressure to increase defence budget spending in light of tensions from Russia and China. So joining me now is GB News political correspondent Tom Harwood, live in Downing Street. Good morning, Tom. I have to kind of stifle the wish to giggle when I hear that Rishi Sunak is getting fighter jets ready to shoot down balloons. So can you just clarify exactly what's going on here, please?
Yes, it does sound a bit fantastical, doesn't it? Although, when we look in the context of what's happened over the last 7 days or so, it sort of becomes more real. 4 objects shot down over North American airspace. 1 of them a confirmed balloon, 3 of them being less clear what they are. But clearly the US is on a heightened state of alert, with its military and air force scrambled to deal with these objects. Interestingly, listening to the US military, they've been saying that these sort of spy balloons have been spotted over other continents as well. And earlier this week, the Defence Secretary Ben Wallace said that it's entirely possible that a Chinese spy balloon may have entered UK airspace as well. This means that our surveillance systems are on a higher level of alert, and we do have the capability to send these air-to-air missiles from our Typhoon jets in order to knock out any potential objects from our airspace. However, there are some logistical challenges here, because our radar systems are designed to pick up fast-moving objects. They filter out slower-moving things so we don't get scared by birds and the like. So there does need to be a greater degree of scrutiny, really, when it comes to our radar systems. But also, of course, due to the curvature of the Earth, Britain might not be the first country to pick up a balloon coming from China. It's likely that our NATO allies would be those that would be able to spot one of these things first or earlier. And it does seem that all of our NATO allies are on a state of higher alert, more aware of this potential threat of Chinese surveillance from these slow-moving, enormous sky balloons. It's worth emphasising just how big and sophisticated these balloons are. When we say the word balloon, we could almost think of a child's birthday party, but the first one that was shot down over the United States was more than 20 metres in height. These are enormous and technical pieces of kit, and no doubt we'll be learning more as the US retrieve the elements of those balloons, as we've learned that they have done in the last 24 hours, and really go through what equipment was on those balloons.
OK, thank you, Tom. Let's get a little bit more analysis from the defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Good morning, Robert. Now, can you help me understand a little bit more about these? As Tom just said, a balloon is perhaps a little bit misleading. They are big. Why would they need to use a spy balloon to rattle some cages? Why? Surely China has more sophisticated technology than this.
They're high, they're sneaky, and they can creep across skies, vital skies, over the Arctic, which is a very hot communication zone, almost undetected, as we found, because it's become clear that they've been launching these things since 2017. That's nearly 6 years by my math. And now we become aware that they are a real threat. Why? Because they can jam communications. They can interfere with digital warfare. And where does Europe and NATO have its first digital war? Ukraine.
Right, brilliant. I'm so glad we've got you, because you can help me understand this, Robert, in a little bit more detail. So have they, as you say, they've been doing this for 6 years, but why are we now, why are America, why is it Western governments are only now cottoning onto them? Why are we now seeing them and shooting them down?
I think you're being very polite. I think why are they only waking up to this now? Because Taiwan has been seeing this kind of activity for a very, very long time, I think for nearly 10 years. Where the surveillance bit of kit of choice, and it's not just a kiddies party number, are these balloons, because they're, sorry, pardon the illusion, they're silent and deadly. They're very difficult to detect, as Tom explained beautifully. Radar, the highly sophisticated, high-level radars tend to filter them out, but I don't think albatrosses and vultures fly at 40,000 feet. But it's another part of the mix, and it's very much part of what you have trailed with the defense agenda, the defense budget now. We are extremely vulnerable from all sides, from China, from Russia particularly, on communications. And that includes your and my mobile phones.
Right, let me tell you what some of our very clever viewers and listeners have been getting in touch and saying. Hugh has said... well... Possibly. Hugh has said, let's be honest, China isn't going to invade Britain. It hasn't invaded Taiwan yet, or Japan or South Korea. I doubt its people would stand for the disruption the Chinese government caved in on COVID due to uncontrollable unrest across the country. Does Hugh have a point?
It's a very good point, but I would add Chinese too, as it's now you see me, now you don't. They've got a very peculiar and complex foreign policy. Top end, confrontation, Straits of Taiwan, building out into the atolls, causing a lot of trouble and damage right across the Pacific with fishing fleets. It's a huge part of aggressive activity by China. But China loves its trade. China, with its aging population, has to live by trade. So it can't sort of hack off Europe and the Allies overmuch because it needs them. Look at their interests in Europe's premier port, the Europort at Rotterdam. They're trying to buy into Genoa, Trieste. They have great chunks of Paris. It is very, very complicated. But what our worry must be is what they may be sneaking through to third parties. Obviously not to the enemy, very complex, very important now, India, but they could be sneaking through to Russia. Some vital stuff about communication which relate to what I said earlier, the digital war that is being fought out across Eastern Europe now.
So do you see it, Robert, more as a kind of information gathering mechanism? It's, you know, when people are saying, well, we're not being invaded by the Chinese.
Right. Yes, they picked up sensors. Right. That's number one. So I'm not going to go to point 2 and 3. Point 2 is interruption, disruption. And that must be the real worry. And it is a real worry now, because if China is doing it from above in the atmosphere, we know, particularly since last February the 24th, that the Russians have been doing it underwater, looking at our undersea cables, where you get tens of trillions of transactions done per day, per week. And this is where we are on alert. It actually plays very strongly for Ben Wallace's bid for more money. But where Ben Wallace, I think, is right, I disagree with him about quite a number of things, but what he is right and is not getting through to his government, let alone to the opposition, defence, security, communication, resilience, the complexity, it's now centre stage. It is centre of the political agenda. And I think Village Westminster has yet to wake up to that.
So what we're looking at really is a cyber war. Am I right?
Yeah, a cyber war, digital war, info war. Yes, they're all interlinked. And that's what one would hope. There is this new so-called integrated review looking at the whole piece of national security and strategy due on March the 7th. I hope this takes it on board. I'm a bit worried because actually they're very slow at writing in Whitehall. They've got to bring that one up to date because this really is a new development.
OK, thank you so much, Robert. That was fascinating. Defence editor at the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Well, it's lucky we're not planning anything like a massive database of digital ID or anything like that, is it? It's a good job we got no plans to do anything that the Chinese might be able to tap into. Amazing. Now, still to come. The car manufacturer Ford has cut over 1,000 jobs today. You'll find out why electric cars are partly responsible. See you in 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Spring-like conditions for some of us today once the fog clears. Sunny across the UK and very mild. It's not going to be completely sunny everywhere. Parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland sees a warm front and some showers associated with this. But the air in general is being drawn up from the south. It's dry, it's sunny air and it's very mild. Once the fog clears, the fog sticking around as an area of low cloud into parts of eastern England at first through the afternoon. And you can see the cloudier skies there for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A few showers travelling across Scotland. But otherwise, where we've got the sunny skies elsewhere, temperatures up at 10 to 13 Celsius widely. But for somewhere like North Devon, North Wales, 14 to 16 Celsius is possible, given the winds will be warming out a little as they travel over higher ground to the south. Once evening gets underway, some fog patches will develop once again across the southeast and eastern England. More patchy, I think, compared with last night, but still risk to travel first thing across eastern parts of England. Further west, we've got cloud and rain appearing by dawn. That's pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland as morning gets underway. Strong winds, gales for the Outer Hebrides for a time. The rain, though, peters out as it pushes across England and Wales. During the afternoon, it's an area of cloud and some light outbreaks of rain. And ahead of that, once the fog clears, sunny skies once again, and 13 to 16 Celsius once more across the southeast and eastern England. To the rear of the cold front, we've got some showers into Scotland as well as Northern Ireland, and then some more persistent cloud and rain pushing into Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and western England through Wednesday evening. The winds will pick up as well, and by Thursday it's just a damp, breezy, but also mild day. Very windy weather on Friday, clearing by Saturday.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh yes, already to bless.
Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel. OK, we are here on the panel. I'm joined by political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister, and broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn. You know what? Anything can happen on this show.
And it usually does. Why we love it.
Does.
We love live television. It's going to be good.
Oh, I love flying by the seat of my pants. Let me tell you.
Maybe that's what happened. It was not the balloons. It was you flying by the seat of your pants up in the air. That would be the one.
Most days I feel like I am. Right. OK, this is a bad news story, Andrew Eborn. It's partly because of you.
It's totally my fault. Whenever it's bad news, it's my fault.
This is about our future move towards electric vehicles. Yes. And I don't think we have thought this through. If I had £1 for every story when I should start with saying that. Ford have cut 1,300 jobs in Britain as it shifts production towards electric vehicles.
Yeah.
Are you completely convinced that electric vehicles are the way forward?
I'll tell you what, and again, it's not as, I don't want to say this, but I did tell you so. And it's something that we've been speaking about for a long time. And it's going to get worse. Because it's not just the one... Firstly, my heart goes out to these are jobs and families and that sort of stuff. And it's, whilst we make light of certain things, the loss of jobs is horrendous. It is something we warned about for a long time. What's going to happen is not just the move to electric cars, it's actually the move to robotics, replacing the workforce and so on and so forth. So what we need to look at, any job, as I've said for years, any job that can be automated will be. And Jack Ma, he predicted exactly that. It's going to be an existential threat to the way that the workforce is constructed. So it's a predictable story. It's tragic that it's 1,300 jobs. There will be more. And I think that's the issue.
It's because the way that the cars are made, as you say, means that there's significantly less work to be done on drivetrains moving out of combustion engines. It's just the robots are making these cars. And, my father and my father's father fixed cars. That was our family business when he sold it a few years ago. 100-year-old car business. Now, we have to move with the times, Sam, but I'm not sure whether we've thought through what these people do instead of making cars.
I mean, these are highly qualified jobs. You know, these are good jobs that we're going to lose here as a country, and that is a great shame. And it is... you know, the government is constantly being asked to think about the jobs of the future. But obviously, long-termism in government is always difficult, as we know. And really, we need to find a way of... Every industry is constantly evolving. You know, the journalism industry is not the same industry that I started in 20 years ago. Staff have been cut because of advances in technology. It makes the job easier to do. You can, you know, you don't need people to take copy down the phone like you used to 20 years ago. You can do it on your phone. So
I loved those days.
They were great days.
I remember phoning through copy and reading out and somebody typing it on the other end.
And then there'd be some fabulous mistakes made down the line, you know. But you know, every industry has to evolve, and that is the sad reality. And jobs are always lost. But the key thing is, how do we find good quality employment for these people in the future? I think the government wants to kind of go down the green technology route, but, you know, there's an awful long way to go on that.
But a lot of the green technology will also be made by robots and will involve AI. I don't know whether you've ever read that speech that Matt Hancock gave in 2017, launching the fourth industrial revolution and introducing Klaus Schwab on stage. And he said, you know, if you don't much like change, I have no good news for you. And he talked about the dirty, the dangerous, the difficult jobs being done by AI and robots. And he's got a point. But then he says, and that leaves people to do the creative and artistic jobs. I'm not sure that bloke who was making cars in Ford wants to spend his day doing a watercolour.
No, but also, I can tell you the watercolours are also being done by AI. We've got chatbots now turning around, and I've spoken about this. They are affecting the creative industries. Journalism, they can start doing all of that sort of stuff. So the creative industries were affected. You've got Moonpig, we talk about Valentine's Day. Love is in the air as well as those balloons. The reality is, it's writing poems. One of the things that Moonpig is now offering is a chatbot which will give you your artificial roses are red, violets or whatever. You work on that sort of principle. So creative industries, every industry is going to be affected. And I'm not being the prophet of doom. I've said this for years. What I will say is that look at alternative ways. Throughout history, we've had technological advancements, industrial revolutions, where people burnt printing presses and so on and so forth. You need to look at what the future's going to hold.
That gave people jobs. I can't see what people are going to do to make a living.
Well, you're going to have more leisure time for people, certainly. And the trouble is people...
going to make us all fat and lazy.
Well, people will live longer, which is why you've got to think...
If they're fat and lazy, they won't.
Well, maybe that's the idea then, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it is that principle. You've got to look at the basic sort of understanding is what's going to happen with technology. Every job that can be automated will be automated. And every job you need to look at and say, could I be replaced by AI or robotics? And the answer is yes. We need to flatten the learning curve so people can prepare for the future.
Well, I'm all very pleased with you getting excited about it, but you've not given me any solutions as to what people are going to do instead.
They will have leisure time. They will have leisure time.
We don't need leisure time. We need purpose. We need to get up in the morning and want to go to work. And human beings need a sense of purpose, Sam.
I really agree.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have our food, we have our shelter, and then we need fulfilment and philosophical satisfaction at the top of our pyramid. We're losing it.
Yeah. But I think, and also, I would slightly question the fact that we're going to get more leisure time, because actually, for many, many years, that's always been the kind of offer that we kind of take over these jobs through robotics and AI and that kind of thing, and we get more leisure time. Actually, we don't. Our working week has just gone up and up and up. So people who are working just end up working longer hours.
Yeah, and you go home and you do your emails on your phone and you never switch off. So your solution of more leisure time is not coming. Your homework, go and find some jobs of the future that are going to be satisfying.
Coding.
These people, coding. I can't think of anything I'd rather do less. That's why Rishi Sunak wants people to do maths till 18, isn't it? So they all become data robots.
There you go.
Right. Talking of education, a record 10,000 fewer young women applied for university for this September. Particularly, it looks like in the nursing and the teaching industry. What industries? What else is the kind of the detail of this, Sam? It's a funny story.
Yeah, it's suggesting that there's been a big fall in applications from women because the number of people applying to nursing courses has dropped, and teaching courses where it's traditionally more female-led. And so, you know, this drop, it's saying that actually during the pandemic, there was a spike in nursing applications because people were inspired by what they'd seen, by nurses going out there and doing their bit to help people.
A clap on the street.
Yeah, absolutely. But since then, I think people have seen the reality. Obviously, the nurses are out on strike.
Yeah.
There is a pay dispute. They feel undervalued. It's incredibly hard work. And so that has really tailed off. And it says the number of applicants to nursing courses fell by 18.6%. And for teaching, it was down by 15.6%. It's huge. It's a huge amount.
For the jobs of the future.
Yeah, and you know these are high-demand professions, and so where are these people going to come from in the future? You know, 3-4 years down the line, we're already struggling. There's already a massive number of vacancies. I think from memory, it's about 45,000 vacancies, nursing vacancies. We've already got a huge number of jobs to fill. Yeah, and this is only going to get worse because 3 years' time we're going to have even more shortages if these figures are correct. Yeah,
it's very depressing. This, Andrew.
Well, but you've also got to put it into context, because you must remember that beforehand there was a spike. So when you're saying it's fallen, what happened is you need to look over a period of time. During the pandemic, the number of applicants choosing to study nursing surged. So you need to look at that sort of side. Well, how much did it surge by, and so on and so forth. Also, this report, and we've got the sort of headlines here, they talk about the number of young women. You've got to look across the workforce. It's not just women, it's so on and so forth. And those figures, so a total of 590 people applied for undergraduate courses in the UK institutions by the January deadline. That was down 2.3% from the same point last year. The question is, why? Is it because they can't afford it anymore? Because of other issues? Do they want to get out and start earning? Or are they no longer interested in these jobs?
And of course, we had the situation last September was it was very difficult to get onto a course because so many people had deferred their entries during lockdown. We got a kind of bit of a backlog, actually, so that students who had even done really well in their A-levels just got rejected. Extraordinary. And so I think a lot of people have gone away and maybe come up with an alternative. University doesn't look as appealing anymore. Obviously, it's very expensive. People are worried about money. And there was also a line in this report about the fact that more universities are taking non-British applicants because they get more money from the international students. That makes a bit of a mockery of Brexit, doesn't it?
Well, no, but that's always been the case. Foreign students have always paid more, and universities, they need to get the money. So it's the same way as we touched on councils beforehand. You need to look at the money flow. And you've got to work out, and behind all of these headlines, and as I say, we try to make sure we stay away from fear-mongering, you try to say, why is it? Why universities need money to survive? How are they going to get it?
Well, you'll be delighted to know that there was a rise in people applying to study computing by nearly 10% and law by 2%.
Look, lawyers and computing, see? That's the profession. It's got to be good.
Right, OK. Still to come. It is Valentine's Day, of course. Many of us. Andrew Eborn. The purse strings are tight. We'll find out some innovative ways that people are getting around this. And it involves a gummy ring, apparently. That's after your morning's news.
Good morning. It's 11:31. I'm Rory Smith in the GB newsroom. The US military says it has recovered key sensors from the suspected Chinese spy balloon. The balloon was brought down off the coast of South Carolina on the 4th of February. The US Northern Command says the search crews found significant debris from the site, including the priority sensor and electronic pieces. The US has also shot down 3 more objects since then. Beijing denies it was a government spy vessel. Millions of households are facing an increase in their council tax from April. Research by the County Councils Network says 3/4 of councils in England are planning a 5% hike. This is the maximum amount allowed without the need for a local referendum and would add around £100 a year to bills for an average Band D property. The local authorities say they have little choice but to raise the council tax in order to protect services. The UK's unemployment rate has remained unchanged. That's despite the economy flatlining. New figures from the Office for National Statistics says unemployment was 3.7% in the 3 months to December. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has described the figures as a sign of resilience, adding that the best thing to do to make people's wages go further is to halve inflation. But Labour says the government has left the economy lagging behind on the global stage. Car giant Ford has said it is cutting around 3,800 jobs across Europe over the next 3 years. This includes 1,300 jobs in the UK, with most of the cuts at the research site in Dunton in Essex. Production sites at Halewood, Dagenham and Daventry will not be affected. It's part of a major restructuring programme. Wyre Council has removed councillors' contact details from its website following abuse over missing mother of 2 Nicola Bully. The decision comes after a number of councillors received inappropriate emails and phone calls. Lancashire Police is investigating. The 45-year-old was last seen walking her dog over a fortnight ago. TV, online and DAB plus radio, this is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "No, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good morning. It's 11:36. This is Bev Turner today on GB News TV and DAB radio. Now, you might have noticed love is in the air today. It's Valentine's Day, or maybe you're not that bothered. I'm not that bothered. I'm asking, how do you find that spark with someone? How do you know if they are the one? In the studio with me is the relationship expert and radio presenter, Siobhan Copland. Copland, you arrange people to cop off with each other. That's a perfect name, isn't it?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. That's a good point.
If you're let's just talk about Valentine's Day. First of all, it's become much kind of more of a commercial enterprise in recent years, hasn't it? I don't remember it being a big thing kind of 10, 15 years ago. And I think maybe that's why I resist it a little bit. Do you find in your work that people do take it seriously still?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, for singles, they feel, you know, it's highlighted, the fact that they're single on Valentine's Day, because there's so many people walking around with bunches of flowers. I remember when I was single myself, you know, you're on the train and everyone's got their balloons and flowers, and it kind of, you know, any other day you can kind of forget about the fact you're single, but it you know, it definitely comes into focus on this day. Yeah.
So you have set up over about 5,000 first dates.
Yes.
Is that right?
Over almost 13 years in the business, yeah.
OK. And how do you go about making those dates turn into long-term relationships?
Good question. I mean, the thing about the service is it's not online, right? So it's not just a quick swipe decision. It's really sort of investing in getting to know each of those individuals. So interviewing them, really getting down, not just the shallow questions, but really getting deep, you know, and understanding their values and really matching them with someone who's in alignment with their values.
And do you have some success with that then?
Yeah, we've got plenty of marriages, babies born, yeah. And that definitely, I mean, just yesterday, we got news of another engagement, so it's, yeah, it's very
well done.
when that happens.
That must be a lovely job. That must make you feel full in your heart.
It really does, yeah. It really does.
Now, people today what happens if you're in a relationship? Now, this is actually my particular situation. She says using it for her own advantage. Right. My partner thinks Valentine's Day is very meaningful and important. And in fact, I've not even said hello to him yet this morning. Hello, darling. But while we've been on air, he sent me 16 pictures on WhatsApp of us together and just saying Happy Valentine's Day.
Oh, what a darling.
I don't really care. I love him every day, right? Yeah, so what do you do in that situation if you're the couple? Because there'll be a lot of people watch this go, yeah, I feel a bit the same way. Normally, traditionally, this is terribly stereotypical, but it's the woman, isn't it, who wants a fuss and maybe the man isn't bothered.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, no, he's obviously in touch with his feminine side, which is lovely. He's emotionally intelligent, which is great. Great qualities in a partner. I think it's also important to understand your partner's love language. So would you prefer, like, for example, acts of service, like him doing things around the house for you rather than all these romantic gestures?
How did you know I like the acts of service? How did you work that out? If we talk about the love language, just explain to our viewers what you mean by love languages.
Yeah, so there's a test called the 5 Love Languages. There's a book on it as well, and you can basically figure out what is the main thing that really fills your partner's cup up, you know. And for some people, it might be gifts. So they really, you know, if they're not getting a gift today, you know, they're going to have the right ump. It could be words of affirmation. So, you know, always kind of speaking, using those expressive words, saying how you feel and, you know, encouraging in that way. Acts of service. So, yeah, taking the bins out could be good enough for you, you know, doing the dishes.
Oh, 100%.
Getting under the car bonnet, all those sort of things.
I'm anyone to take the bins out for me, Siobhan. I'm genuinely, that's all I need is help. And then I think the other one, isn't it, quality time?
Quality time, and of course...
And physical touch.
Not forgetting physical touch, yeah. Of course, yeah.
And how... Do you think I think they're quite easy ways to work out which of those you are and which your partner is.
Yeah.
If you are in a relationship where you don't align, though, how do you make that work?
Well, as I say, you don't have to have the same, you know, as long as you're aware of what your partner's is and making sure that you make that effort to make that effort with that particular side of things so that they feel, you know, loved, because we all kind of express and receive and feel love differently in different ways.
Very true. Right, people are feeling the pinch at the moment. So a lot of people are like, I'm not sure I can justify going out for an expensive 3-course meal with wine. So what kind of things are people doing if they're doing Valentine's Day on a budget?
Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of the old
Whilst keeping
meal
it
deals.
suitable for 11:40 in the morning.
What I'll be doing today, to be honest, I won't mention exactly where, but I'll be going to one of the supermarkets and getting one of those meal deals for 20 quid, you know, and you can get some really good ones, actually, where it comes with wine, dessert, main course, but even better still, cook together. You know, actually prepare a meal together. I think that's a really romantic thing to do.
Or it could be a total nightmare. You're either with your partner in the kitchen and you both cook differently and you don't get on, and then he leaves like pans full of stuff and you're going, why are we using 5 pans when we can only use 1?
So for you, Bev, I'd leave the cooking to him and you just enjoy a glass of wine.
It's quite insightful, isn't it? Now, I know you've got 3 young children, haven't you? Your youngest is 9 months, 3 and 6. Just tell our viewers a little bit, talk about the impact of when when you have kids. That is the biggest threat, I think, to relationship happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, obviously, before you have children, it's, oh, baby. And then, of course, there's another baby that takes the focus. And I think more often the man is the one that feels really kind of out the picture and misplaced, you know, because as women, we're just obsessed with our babies, But I think it's really important to remember that your relationship is the tree, the children are the branches, and you've got to, you know, really make that effort to reconnect, you know, because that connection does get a little bit distant, and you've got to try to make that effort to reconnect. So you're spending that time together, that quality time together, and also just showing appreciation and working as a team. You know, that's what's so important, because with children, you know, that teamwork really comes into focus.
Especially for mothers, I think.
You don't want to become resentful. I mean, Michelle Obama talked about, you know, 10 years of marriage with him, that she hated him once they had children, because she said she was scoring points, you know, who's doing more.
Yeah, you get competitive on the domestic side of things, don't you, the division of labour.
Yeah.
Siobhan, thank you so much. Have a lovely evening.
Thank you, you too.
Right, Siobhan Copland there, thank you. Now, sticking with Valentine's Day, a survey has found that nearly half of Brits that want to get married say that they can't afford to propose due to the cost of living crisis. The survey by Lottie Lee Fine Jewellery revealed that 47% of would-be proposers are hesitant to buy an engagement ring because of concerns over the cost. Our reporter Ellie Costello met a couple who got engaged with the help of a gummy ring.
Yasmin and Michael have been together for 2 years. They want to get married, but the cost of living crisis has made buying an expensive ring impossible. Michael took matters into his own hands and proposed with the help of a Haribo ring.
I knew it didn't matter if it was, you know, gold or if it was, you know,
Haribo.
a Haribo. I knew I wanted to get engaged with her.
I genuinely thought he was making fun of me. To start with, I thought he was joking. You had to convince me you weren't joking.
Yeah.
And then once I was convinced that you weren't joking, obviously I was like completely over the moon.
I just simply can't afford it. We've always said since we got engaged that, we would like to get one. And every time, you know, we would get close to being able to afford it.
There's always just something more important, like an electricity bill or council tax or something suddenly more important.
You know, we're here in a blanket together because just heating's just no point. There's no point trying to heat the house.
Yeah.
Yasmin and Michael aren't alone. Since the Russian invasion of Ukraine, diamond prices have increased by 20% as people rush to invest their money in safer commodities like gold and diamonds. This increase in demand has made it harder for people to afford a traditional diamond ring. Hatton Garden-based jeweller Lottie Lee conducted a survey and found that 41% of couples who want to get married now say they cannot afford to. 47% of respondents were hesitant to buy an engagement ring because they were worried about the cost.
Ultimately, people still want to get engaged and they still want a fabulous engagement ring. What I'm seeing is that people will have to spend a lot longer saving in order to make a big purchase, and also people are much, much more careful about how they're spending their money. I would always recommend, in terms of other stones, you look at either a ruby or a sapphire. They're much more cost effective and they're still beautiful. Lab-grown diamonds are very cost effective. They're actually 50% less than natural diamonds. You can get much more bling for your money and they are beautiful. You cannot tell the difference between them and a natural diamond.
Yasmin and Michael are considering alternative engagement rings and hope that once life gets more affordable, they can start saving for their future together.
The hope for the future is that the money will come in, the cost of living will go down and we'll be able to afford it. And we can get hitched.
A Haribo ring may not be to everyone's taste, but for Yasmin and Michael, the cost of living crisis means it's sweet enough for them to start their lives together. Ellie Costello, GB News.
Thank you, Ellie. Now my panel are back with me. I am delighted to be with political editor of the Daily Express, Sam Lister, broadcaster and lawyer Andrew Eborn. Right, Sam, this story today about GP shortages, meaning that family doctors are looking after 3,000 patients. That sounds like a lot for a family doctor.
Huge number, and it's gone up quite dramatically. So the number of fully qualified full-time GPs has fallen by 7% in 6 years. So So, yeah, you've got about 3,000 on average, but it really varies across the country. If you're in Blackburn with Darwin, you're in trouble. That's the kind of worst place to be in terms of your access to GPs. Other badly affected areas are Portsmouth, Hull and Oldham. But Liverpool, you're all right. There's quite a lot of GPs in Liverpool. So it really is like... This is Lib Dem research. They're saying it's a postcode lottery, and it really does seem to be dependent on where you are. I mean, there's a lot of issues with GPs in that there is a kind of pension tax trap that they call it. So if you a long-serving GP, you're paying into your pension, there becomes a point where it's not actually worth being at work because you're penalised with your pension. And I think that has led to quite a lot of very senior doctors leaving the profession over the last few years. It's a big problem across the NHS, actually, not just in GP, GP professions. It's actually in consultants and across the NHS. And that is something that I know the government is looking at, but it's one of a number of priorities for the budget. It's only if, inflation comes down, if there's a little bit of extra money, they will look at sorting out this problem, and that might help, but that doesn't really help people right now.
Andrew, when I'm looking at these figures, and it is interesting that it's analysis by the Liberal Democrats, this is a bit like Labour doing the digging.
Question everything.
Isn't it? It's like the Labour doing the digging into the expenses, though, this week as well. You can tell that we're going to be running up to an election probably in probably 8 to 12 months. So you have to take some of these figures, which are found by rival parties, with a little pinch of salt, I always think. But these figures are huge. And I can't quite work out why. It's not that we've necessarily got fewer GPs, but we've got an extra 4 million patients have registered with family doctors since 2016. Yeah. That's a huge number of people. It
is a huge number. And you're right, as we always say, look, dig beneath the story. Why is this story coming out now? Yeah. Who's feeding this narrative? And why is it happening? I mean, you touched earlier on about the pension pot and the cap on the pension pot, and they are looking at that sort of side. It was a news story that broke this week, and actually they touched on it previously, to say, look, we can encourage people back to work by giving them tax breaks if they can invest more in the pension. Because people turn around and say, well, why should I work anymore if I don't want to be the richest person in the graveyard? I want to have an incentive to do that. Also, what it will do, and I know you always love it when I say this, it's going to accelerate artificial intelligence, and it's going to accelerate robotics within the medical field. And I always say, imagine if you could have a doctor's surgery which could be connected to the best medical intelligence in the world, and all doctors could benefit from that. What will happen is you're going to get earlier diagnosis, and earlier diagnosis will mean that people get cured earlier and so on and so forth.
We're going to get misdiagnosis. Let me tell you what happens when I go into my GP. They've got one of those screens where you go in and you put your date of birth in, and then it will tell you the doctor's ready to see you. It's always got an out-of-order sign on the front of it.
It doesn't believe your
Nothing
date of birth.
Works anymore.
It knows you're much younger than that. That's what happens.
Nothing works. This is the problem, this drive towards tech and a future of digital to save the NHS. Yeah. Nothing works, Andrew.
Well, they're certainly right to a certain point. Some of it breaks down in your direct results of it. It's wrong to say nothing works.
Well, my experience.
Electricians, that's a good job for people, so get a few sparkies.
Yeah.
No, the reality is it is going to work, it's going to get better. It's understanding. That's what we try and do on this show. We turn around and explain what's going to happen. And as a futurist, that's exactly what we're going to try and do, prepare people for the future.
What does that... Yeah, but a GP, the whole point, Sam, of a GP is it is the personal it is the human face of your health journey, right? I don't want a screen to go in and type in what's wrong with you. What are your symptoms? Type it in. Right, we're going to give you a little box of pills on your way out.
Yeah. The way my local GP has dealt with this is to effectively put in so many layers before you can actually ever get to the GP. So if you ring up, you're asked why you're ringing up, then you are referred to a clinician, unspecified, who then rings you, takes you through a questionnaire, then you get to see somebody. But it's not a doctor, and they don't actually tell you when you get there. It's another clinician who then takes you through another questionnaire, and then you might get a call back, or then you might be able to see an actual doctor. But, what they're doing is trying to weed out minor cases, which actually makes a lot of sense.
Like a good idea to you?
I'll tell you what it's doing. It's accelerating the need for the real cases. And everybody recognises that if you can reduce waiting times by two things. One is earlier diagnosis, but secondly, getting rid of that admin side of it.
Yeah.
That has got to be an advantage. And I speak to a lot of doctors. I speak at conferences. I talk about technology and how the power that it can unleash. We help them prepare videos in terms of getting patients ready for their first experience. All of that will help reduce waiting time.
No, I don't agree. You and I will fight about this till we're all living in your robotic world. I don't agree, and I just think there are so many. I think maybe it's as a woman as well. We have quite complicated health needs because often, you know, we birth children. Just to point out, we still do amazingly.
Do you?
We haven't got robots to do that for us yet. It's only a matter of time. But you know, we are this multifaceted, sophisticated system of pipes and tubes and, you know, various things that we don't want to have those conversations with a robot.
But it's not just conversations, it's other things as well. It's earlier diagnosis, so it's not taking completely out the human element. It's speeding up the boring admin stuff, the stuff which takes a lot of time, and it takes it away from the expertise. So if like you're working on that sort of basis, you'll still have your personal touch.
I just don't care. I want more human beings, more doctors, more nurses. Let's put the power back in the hands of doctors. They've had enough of that taken away the last few years. We were talking earlier, weren't we, about whether you missed it. If you missed the show, why? You can see it back on the app, on the GB News app. And we were talking to William Sitwell, restaurateur, about tipping and the complications in this country, particularly. We're quite awkward about it, aren't we? And you've all been getting in touch on this. It really did light up the inbox. And David has said, absolutely no problem in asking for the service charge to be removed. I did this only the other day in a chain restaurant. Always tip separately in cash, and this ensures that the tip goes to the staff who served you. I usually check the size of the bill before deciding how much cash to give. Sam, do you find it awkward when the service charge bit of the bill comes around?
I prefer it to be included, and then I can just do it all on my card.
Are you a politician? It's not one of those procurement cards, is it?
I couldn't possibly comment. But I do know, it's funny because I spend, if I'm not in London, I'm in Yorkshire, and I do notice there is a difference. In London, it's automatically added. In Yorkshire, it very rarely is. Yes. And I think there is more resistance in Yorkshire to just having it automatically added because people want to... Whereas in London, people just want to pay it on the card, they don't carry cash, and they just want it to be really quick. So I've noticed a difference. Yeah. I'm wildly stereotyping, but that's my experience.
No, I think you're right. We Northerners don't like having the mickey taken out.
Exactly.
We will call it out, whereas in the South, people just go, it's fine, I don't want any fuss, just
but that's it's very British, isn't it? Not to create a fuss. But in a lot of restaurants, they say at the bottom, service not included, and boy, do they mean it sometimes. Service has collapsed in some of these establishments. I have the joy of eating in some of the finest establishments. A lot of those have gone downhill tremendously over the last things. I think you have to be, if you're a service industry, you need to deliver on that service.
Yeah, and that requires good managers who are prepared to train staff and hold them to account if they're doing a rubbish job.
Absolutely.
Now, let's just talk a little bit about Valentine's Day before we go. I'm sure you've been excited. Do you have any plans for Valentine's Day?
Every day is Valentine's Day for me. They talk about the goat, it's the greatest of all time. I will gloat, I'll be the greatest lover of all time. You could work on that. No, but I love romance. Romance is not there.
I'm quite scared. I'm going to come to you quite quickly. You're married, you have a couple of kids.
Well, we're not actually married.
Oh, how very old-fashioned of me.
We are, we've been together 14 years, and I am allergic to Valentine's Day. Ooh. And I put a ban on it in my late 20s. I just will not celebrate it. I'm just not interested. It's just so phony, isn't it? Yes. Like, just be nice to each other the rest of the year. You don't have to, like, just the thought of going out with loads of other couples, everyone's sat there looking, oh, why are we having to pay this massive bill? I'm very unromantic, and it's just not my thing.
Is your partner the same as you?
He's more romantic than me, but, you know, he doesn't believe in Valentine's Day either, so we're quite happy on that score.
Good. Well, there we go. A little bit of realism to end the show on. A bit depressing, though, wasn't it?
Oh, I think love is in the air. We're going to do that. It's going to be glorious. Well into that beef, bake that Alaska, and arrange yourself a little ducky. That's what they say.
Well, love is in the air. Thank you so much for watching today. We've come to the end of the show. Coming up next is GB News Live with Mark Longhurst. I'm Bev Turner. I'll see you tomorrow at 10.
Hello, I'm Aidan McGibbon from the Met Office. Spring-like conditions for some of us today once the fog clears. Sunny across the UK and very mild. It's not going to be completely sunny everywhere. Parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland sees a warm front and some showers associated with this. But the air in general is being drawn up from the south. It's dry, it's sunny air and it's very mild. Once the fog clears, the fog sticking around as an area of low cloud into parts of eastern England at first through the afternoon. And you can see the cloudier skies there for northwest England, parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. A few showers travelling across Scotland. But otherwise, where we've got the sunny skies elsewhere, temperatures up at 10 to 13 Celsius widely. But for somewhere like North Devon, North Wales, 14 to 16 Celsius is possible, given the winds will be warming out a little as they travel over higher ground to the south. Once evening gets underway, some fog patches will develop once again across the southeast and eastern England. More patchy, I think, compared with last night, but still risk to travel first thing across eastern parts of England. Further west, we've got cloud and rain appearing by dawn. That's pushing into Scotland and Northern Ireland as morning gets underway. Strong winds, gales for the Outer Hebrides for a time. The rain, though, peters out as it pushes across England and Wales. During the afternoon, it's an area of cloud and some light outbreaks of rain. And ahead of that, once the fog clears, sunny skies once again, and 13 to 16 Celsius once more across the southeast and eastern England. To the rear of the cold front, we've got some showers into Scotland as well as Northern Ireland, and then some more persistent cloud and rain pushing into Northern Ireland, eventually into Wales and western England through Wednesday evening. The winds will pick up as well, and by Thursday it's just a damp, breezy but also mild day. Very windy weather on Friday, clearing by Saturday.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236. And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB+ radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB